Hey, hello everybody. So today we're going to talk about kitchen space-saving solutions. So I have a very small kitchen. We live in a 2-bedroom condo and it's less than 1,000 square feet. So we need to save every square inch of space. So we're forever having problems finding space in drawers. And I noticed we had a space between the fridge and the wall, and we had a space between the fridge and the oven. And I thought, you know what? I bet if I'm clever, I can make some storage out of that. And I looked online, and there are pre-engineered things, but the problem was none of them were skinny enough for the space that I had, and none of them were going to fit. So I want to show you a little bit. I'm going to pull it out for you. So you'll see here I have a pocket door. It's like a pocket door, basically, right? And I have spices up there, and we have canned goods on the bottom. And, you know, be logical about it. You put your heavy stuff on the bottom and the lighter stuff on the top. And you're going to be amazed how well this works. So this is so simple. This is, it was a piece of 3.5-inch pine. Several pieces, actually. And so what I did here is I just, made it intermediate shelves. And this is just kind of like a sponge-like fabric that I bought online, and you don't need much. I just needed things to kind of stay in, and the fact that it's between the refrigerator and the wall keeps everything in. It's absolutely amazing how well it worked. It worked better than I could have imagined. So let me give you a little idea here of how it's constructed. We just have little bolts here. So what we basically have are just little metal angle brackets. And what I did is each one has 4. Just, placed them in place, marked where the holes were going to be, drilled it out. And then we have bolts. Right there. And I doubled up the nuts. You see what I did here was put a second bolt on here, so that there's no sharp pieces here. We have children and ourselves too. You didn't want to scrape ourselves. So that's how that's constructed. Just little angle brackets. And that's the way it looks on the end. And so that's what you're looking at when it's tucked away. And if you really want to be very picky and make it look really nice, you can go through, and I would have gone through and I would have centered all these little washers. It looks a little bit funny because they're not centered. But from a distance it looks nice. It's not terrible. The missus was happy with the way it turned out, and you'd absolutely be amazed how much room this made. This drawer on the bottom used to be full of spices. That became our new towel storage, and bib storage, and a whole bunch of other storage. So that was just the spices. That was just clearing out these 2 rows of spices. So, what you basically have to figure out is, how wide do you have, by how long do you have, and figure out your square footage. And we ended up with a bunch of square footage, 3.5 inches at a time, right there. And so, the one thing that's a little bit hokey, let's show you this. So here's the hokey part, right? Every project, it's easy to get 90% of it done and call it good. So the feature here for the rolling, what those are pocket door wheels. And the way I bought it, the bolt was threaded through the other direction. And so all I did was I turned the bolt around and put it through the other direction, and I ended up with this little trolley with these 2 wheels and a little bolt sticking up. Now where I failed, and the extra 10% of effort I should have gone to, should have gone back to the hardware store, pulled out that bolt that you see how it's not all the way through here, and it just kind of rests in there. And it's amazing how well that actually works, but every once in a while these wheels get turned and I have to go in there by hand and straighten them back out. So if I were super diligent, what I would have done is gotten a longer bolt and bolted this in set it straight with a washer and tighten that down real tight, and these wheels would never move. So another interesting feature I wanted to point out of this is you see how we have the molding here? So I'd like to point out here how easy that is. I was just pushing that with one hand while I'm, straddling the ground here. So what I had to do was I had to create a profile, and this bottom shelf had to be narrower than the rest of the area. So what I did was I took a piece of cardboard and I set the cardboard against here, and I traced the profile, put a pencil back here, and I traced the profile on the cardboard. And then what I did was I transferred that profile, I cut it out, and I transferred it to the piece of wood. And just with a jigsaw, again, this is going to be at least an intermediate project. It involves woodworking. You might need some minor metal work, as far as if you need to cut down some of the screws and grind them, or just go to the hardware store and buy the correct length. So, I did have to use a little bit of woodworking here. So I had to take one piece and I had to measure and rip it. There's many ways you can do that. You can just use, I really love a jigsaw, real simple, and you don't need complicated woodworking tools. You can get yourself a 4-foot level and some clamps, and you clamp the 4-foot level onto your piece of wood as a guide, and then run your jigsaw, and you can make some really straight cuts as long as you have to measure how far is your side of the guide from the blade. And I use either a framing, what do they call it, like a rafter triangle, and I clamp that onto a piece of wood as a guide. Or if I have to make a really long cut, I'll use something like a T-square, like a drywall T-square works as a good straight edge, or a 4-foot level or longer is a good guide for a saw. So you don't need a fancy table saw. You just take your time and be careful. My 7th grade woodshop teacher was missing a finger, and my favorite moment of woodshop was when I'm standing there in front of a jigsaw, or I believe maybe it was called a scroll saw. Anyway, a woodworking tool, and I'm about to fire it up, and I look at him and I say, "I'm scared." And he holds his hand up where he's missing his finger, and he looks at me and says, "You should be." So before you pick up any power tools, use your common sense. Put guides in place, wear gloves, and wear eye protection, and be careful, and don't lose a finger like my 7th grade woodshop teacher. So anyway, every good woodshop teacher is missing a finger. Anyway, so here we go. What I did was I took that piece of cardboard and I traced it on and I marked it. And you can see this is not the prettiest cut here, but like I said, I used a jigsaw. And I went in here and I believe I took a file and kind of cleaned it up a little bit, made it look a little bit nicer because we were going to use it inside the house. And so basically that way I could still have a shelf on the very bottom, and we put some cans down there and other things that fit, and we didn't lose, that precious bit of space there. So that just about wraps it up. To look at this. Really handy. So simple. You just literally grab it with your hand, kind of pull it out very gently. We see we have this kind of sponge fabric, and I just stapled that in place. Now the really nice thing would have been to take an 1/8 inch piece of wood and make little shelves, but I was worried about how much space I was going to lose by putting an 1/8 inch and an 1/8 inch on each side when I only had 3.5 inches of total width to begin with. So these sponges actually work very well. You have to be careful, take your time, and open and close it. The only time something really could even fall out is when you have it fully open, and you just take your time and be careful. But you see, this holds all kind of things. We have our salt and pepper here, all kinds of soups, spices, canned goods, and that freed up a ton of shelf space for us. And you just kind of gently nudge it back in, and the wall and the refrigerator keep it in place. And so If you have any spaces like this in laundry rooms, in your kitchens, and space is real tight and you gotta make, look, it's kind of a mess right now, sorry guys. But look, this is our kitchen. And we got 4 people here. So we gotta make use of every square inch of space. Speaking of, we're gonna do a little 2-for-1 special here. We're gonna show you one additional project. You know what, we're gonna show a little teaser here and I'll actually go into it later, but look at that. You want to save some space, get one of these guys with the hooks, and then you put all your hanging utensils. That's handy. Anyway, thank you very much for tuning in, guys. Please like and subscribe. Thank you.